That pen and staring makes them feel all the pain they caused in their lives. Oh, and he nailed it with Danny Ketchum. They launched the rise of the midnight suns. Mackie could finally ride Johnny Blaze now, and he gave him a hellfire gun. Oh, there's a notebook in his office, don't you know, full of stories, scenes, and fights. Howard Mackie sits and plots dears, and then our hero, then he writes. He's written so much more than just Ghost Rider, but that burning biker's where it began. There's so many books for you to choose from. Go read something written by a man. We got Ghost Rider, a couple of Spideys, 3 issues of Moon Knight, his creations abound. Danny catches back as Ghost Rider. Howard Mackey's back in town. I say Ghost Rider, quite a few Spideys, those 3 issues of Moon Knight. The list's profound, and now Danny's back with his creator. Howard Mackey's back in town. Yes, Howard Mackie is back.
That was absolutely awesome. Okay, we are live. You're watching Splash Pages. My name is Leo. I'm the monkey behind the keyboard here. We have an awesome show scheduled for you as always, and an amazing guest. I can't wait to get into this. But without further ado, Velvet, how's it going?
Hey, it's your man Velvet J here on another award-winning podcast evening Tuesday night. It's 8 o'clock. Let's get it. It's news, a fantastic guest, Ghost Rider. We're getting it done. Let's get the show going, and on to my friend. Boom!
It's me. Hey, it's me, George Jeremy. I'm here tonight, man. It's Tuesday night. It's Splash Pages, and we do have a very special guest tonight. But I'm gonna pass it over to either Drew or Carrie. Drew.
It's me. I'm gonna take the buck this time. Hey, everybody. I'm Drew. We're here. It's Tuesday. It's Splash Pages. We got a great guest. Wasn't that intro fantastic? That's the first time we've done that. A lot of news, a lot of great stuff. But next up, the Cthulhu with the curls.
Hey everybody. Welcome to Splash Pages. We have a very awesome guest tonight that I might have a little bit of something to do with a slight obsession or something. You know, I was just in his house singing. But yeah, welcome. Get excited. We have got Howard Mackie.
The Mac's back in town. I mean, what?
Hey, thank you for joining us, Howard.
Hey, thanks for having me. And thanks for the song, and thanks for actually reminding me that I did 3 issues of Moon Knight. Somebody just recently asked me, and I had no memory of how much I wrote.
That's my only criticism of the song. Right after 3 issues of Moon Knight, you should have said, and it all started with Iron Man.
Exactly.
Listen, she did that in 12 hours, man. Like, people,
I was loving it.
you know that. Listen, being that I was one of the 3 people that auditioned, that she's just like, no, I can't. You know what? I don't have time for your mistakes. I'm going to do it myself. She was like, fuck it. I'm going to do the Mel Brooks. I'm going to do this myself.
Yeah, I discovered that none of us can sing with music behind us.
That's not true. I'm just, Bobby Darin is very hard to mimic because, it's like he's trying to scat Sinatra. And I'm like, what the fuck, Bobby? Like, I'm just like, I'm seeing him in the Ed Sullivan show and he's just like, da 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 at the moon, babe. I'm just like, what the fuck is this song about? I'm just like, God damn it. So,
Well-
but it worked out great. So who cares? You know.
First person
Like I
with
said, I was
technical
impressed.
difficulties.
And you did technically have Moon Knight guest appear beyond writing just the series, but
Yeah.
I know that it was you wrote I wrote one Moon Knight. No, you wrote quite a few. No, he wrote three.
Honestly, I've written enough stuff over the years that I don't remember, even including the Ghost Rider stuff. There's a gentleman, another Uber fan of mine who I do see at a number of shows, especially Terrificon and a show in New Jersey. When people ask me questions about my Ghost Rider run, I hope that he's next to me, and I just, he knows everything about what I've written, and I don't. I'm too busy writing.
That's fantastic to have one of those.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So Howard, if we went back to the beginning of like your origin story up to working for Mark Grunwald, can you fill that in a little bit for us?
My origin story. Sure. I mean, it pretty much of it plays out in the pages of Ghost Rider. I was born and raised in Cypress Hills, Brooklyn. Lived directly across the street from the Cypress Hills Cemetery. Hung out in those cemeteries. Got in trouble in those cemeteries. Got chased by the caretaker in those cemeteries, who carried a shotgun that he filled with rock salt. I personally never was hit. Some of my friends did, and apparently it hurts quite a bit. But as a matter of fact, if you go to those early issues of Ghost Rider, I took photo reference. I went back to the old neighborhood, to back in the days when we used film, and I shot pictures for Javier. And so a lot of that stuff is very accurate. I had a good friend whose father was a caretaker in another part of the cemetery, and we used to go there and just, I got drunk there, but we when I was underage, and so there was that. I was raised by a single mom, and so all of that kind of fit in to the Ghost Rider stuff. But then my early job was, I worked for an exporting company, shipping equipment to Australia and New Zealand, and then made the natural transition into editing comic books.
Yeah, natural.
What? And the reason that happened is I grew up with a gentleman by the name of Mike Carlin. I don't know.
Wow, really?
Mike,
awesome.
Yeah. Mike and I were very good friends growing up, and we used to go to a lot of music clubs in the late 70s, early 80s. It was the new wave scene, and he was really tired of hearing me bitch and moan about my job. And he had gotten promoted from assistant editor to full editor, and he said, why don't you just interview for this job? Because at that point I had pretty much drifted away from comic books, to be honest. But when he started working at Marvel, I started getting free comics, and so I got very caught up on continuity.
Nice.
And I interviewed for the job, didn't really think I was going to get it, wasn't sure I wanted it because it paid nothing. I had to take a pretty substantial cut in pay to work at Marvel on staff. And then a few things happened. One, I walked into the office and there was a very attractive young woman sitting on the couch in the office that I was going to be sharing with Mark. And I thought, wow, it's going to be a great place to work. And I wound up dating her. And 40 years later, I'm probably keeping her awake as she's trying to doze off in the other room. She gets up way too early for work. She's up at 4:30 every morning. So yeah, and then I had no intention of writing, but Mark knew I liked to write, and he insisted I write my first comic book story. It was when Denny O'Neil got fired from Marvel. He got kicked off out of the office, and that meant his run on Iron Man was ended.
Yeah.
And Mark Grunwald gave me one of the best lines that I used over and over again, both as an editor and then as a dad later on. We were sitting down trying to figure out what we were going to do because Denny left in the middle of a story, and Mark said, we need to find somebody to finish Denny's story. And I said, yes, we do. He said, it needs to be somebody who knows where Denny was going. And I said, yes, it does. And he said, it's going to be you. And I said, oh, no, no, it's not. And he said, oh, you're confusing what we're doing right now for a conversation. And he made me write my first story, and he was brutal. I rewrote that first one because of him. I had to rewrite it probably 5 to 7 times.
Mm-hmm.
And
do you remember that storyline, Howard?
Yeah, it involved Bethany Cabe and her ex-husband, and then I got to use the living laser. So, and as a matter of fact, as we're saying this, I'm looking above my desk, and I have the splash page to Iron Man 211, which was the issue that we're talking about, because I worked with Alex Saviak, who's just a wonderful, one of the best storytellers I had the privilege to work with. Taught me, I just told him this. I saw him at a couple of conventions. I worked exclusively with Alex for probably, my first 5 or 6 stories. And then we did Web of Spider-Man together as well. Right. Chuck Norris and his Karate Commandos. And just a bunch of stuff. And so between working with him and with Al Milgram, who I really do believe are 2 of the best storytellers, artists as storytellers in the business, that really helped me as a young writer to know how to write comic books and for an artist. And when that book came out, a couple of things happened. Number one, when the art got returned to Alex, he showed up in my office. I was still on staff as an assistant editor, and Alex showed up in my office and presented me with the page. And he said, Howard, this is the first time your name will appear in print with the credit writer. And I'm sure it's not going to be the last. And, it was just a very gracious thing. And I consider it my good luck charm, talisman, because it turned out Alex was right. It was not my last, because editors, as we want to do, we're always reading everybody else's stuff to see who we could get to write for us. And they suddenly said, oh, Howard, I didn't know. Well, Danny Fingeroth came to me and said, oh, Howard, I didn't know you could write. And I said, well, the jury's still out on that one. This one story. So all of it, that one story led to a lot of additional work. So I just was very lucky.
Was the issue of Web of Spider-Man the first time you ever wrote Spider-Man?
Yes, I believe so. I don't know, honestly, because people sometimes come to me and tell me, like I had a guy that I worked with for years on staff, who told me I edited an issue that he wrote, a Spider-Man story, and I have zero memory
Right.
at all. I said to him, I said, Shali, I said, well, is this a good story about me as an editor or a bad story? He said, oh, no, you were great. I said, oh, in which case, then definitely I did it.
It was me.
Yeah, I think the first, and that was probably, and it's so hard for me to remember now, that issue of Web of Spider-Man was probably incredibly intimidating to me because I was writing Spider-Man. Spider-Man was, as a very, very young reader, I was a huge Spider-Man fan. I was a
Right.
huge Batman fan. In the montage, in the beginning, there was a Batman Black and White that
Right.
I wrote a 6-page story for DC featuring Batman. After having written somewhere shy of, I don't know how many issues I've written, as I said, but I've written a bunch. And I got this 6-page Batman story, and I completely froze because it's friggin' Batman, for God's sakes, and but I had a lot of fun. But that, I'm sure that went through my head when I was I mean, the arrogance to think that a young newbie writer could tackle Spider-Man when so many great stories were done before me. But
Well,
anyway, I got to do it for a while.
You had to, yeah. I was going to say you had a significant run, so I think you did okay.
Well, I tried not to have a significant run. If you look, I did web for, I don't, I'll let other people figure out how long I did web. But I did it for a while. And then what happened, it was right around that time. Well, what happened was when I was pitching Ghost Rider, I was still on staff, and I had a bunch of other things I did. Avengers Spotlight, it was solo Avengers at one point. I did stories for them for a while. And do you want to hear how I got the Ghost Rider assignment?
Absolutely.
Oh, totally.
I'm sure Carrie does.
I loved Ghost Rider character. I mean, flaming skull, motorcycle. Come on.
Yeah.
You had me. And I really liked where the old series wrapped up. When Mark DeMatteis. I struggled with that because for the entire time I worked with Mark, he was always DeMatteis. And I've been corrected multiple times and say Mark Castles, his name is DeMatteis. So I'm gonna accept that he's just wrong, but I'll say it. Anyway, I loved his stuff, and because it touched on. Because it's DeMatteis or DeMatteis, and his stuff is just awesome in general. But it touched on a lot of themes of. I'm a very lapsed Catholic. I mean, that's an
same. Don't worry, you're doing great.
Gross understatement. I did 8 years of Catholic school, so I like to say I was a practicing Catholic, and I just
you're in good company. Don't worry. Same here. Keep going. You're doing great, Howard.
And that's why some of those themes that Mark also was a lapsed Catholic, and I kind of grasped onto those. And there's a lot of that Catholicism in the background of my my Ghost Rider stuff. But Mark Grunwald, he was my first boss, my friend, my mentor, and we shared a very small office together. And so we would just talk about stuff, and along the lines I was talking about Ghost Rider. And so he knew I was a big Ghost Rider fan. And I was now a full editor, and he showed up in my office one day and said, look, he was an executive. He was the executive editor, so one step below editor-in-chief. He said, we'd like to bring the Ghost Rider character back, and I know you're a big fan, so why don't you give us a pitch? I said, okay, great. I'll do it. And then he started walking out of the office, and he stopped in the door, and he said, oh, one caveat. Can't use Johnny Blaze. And I went, oh, fuck. I wanted to write Blaze. And he said, nope. He said, we want a new, younger character that you'll create. I said, okay. I was not happy, but I figured I'd go along with it anyway. And that's how Danny Ketch was created. And it probably, there's a rule of thumb with writing, you write what you know. I probably took that way too literally, because I had to reread the early run in order to prep for the new series I just did, and I was shocked at how much of me, the younger version of me, was in there, and but that's how Ghost Rider came to be. What I didn't know when Mark came in, I thought he was just asking me to write Ghost or give them a pitch for Ghost Rider. I didn't realize they had contacted, I think, 4 or 5 other writers to also give it, and all of them had way more experience than me. I found this out much later after mine was the one that was accepted.
Right.
Because if I had known that, it would have frozen me in place, and I never would have. I would have backed out, said no, you know. So it was very much a series of fortunate events for me that led to Ghost Rider. And I'm sure I had a point to the earlier thing we were discussing, and I don't remember what it was.
It's not bad for the man who no one had ever seen your face at Marvel, right? Isn't that?
That is correct. I was the mysterious Howard Mackie. Yes. Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I'm looking above my desk, and if you remember the mysterious Howard Mackie, which was a contest. I mean, Mark Grunwald, it was when he was running the letters pages for, we did the Avengers line of books. Mark had a great sense of humor, and I think mostly it was I got hired late in the shipping month, and he wanted to introduce me in the comics, and normally would like put a picture of me or something in like that in there, and he didn't have time, so he just on the spot created this, nobody can see what Howard Mackie looks like, blah 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 blah, and then it opened it up to a contest for readers to do drawings of what Howard Mackie looks like.
That's
and
funny.
Hold on, pardon me one second.
Yes, those insider deets, everyone.
Oh, is this the winner?
Well, I have the winning entry.
Oh boy!
Yeah.
This was the winner, and the gentleman's name was Marky Landsberg. Okay.
All right.
Oh wow!
Beautiful.
Look at that art.
He was about, I don't know, I think he told me he was 7 or so when he drew it. And the fun part of that story for me is he, about 5 years ago, I was doing a Comic-Con in Hawaii.
You met him.
I don't know why. And literally the first Comic-Con that my wife ever attended with me, which I don't know why. But so I'm sitting at the table, and a gentleman of, I don't know, he had to have been, late 30s, early 40s, maybe, is at the table, and he's got his young son with him. And he says, I'm sure you don't know who I am. And I said, oh, no, oh, sure. Have we met before? And he said, no. And he said, I'm Mark. I can't remember how to say his name, Landsberg. And he didn't even tell me who he was. He held up a copy of the letters page in which his entry was posted. And he said, I don't know if you remember this. And I jumped up from my table, and I went, you're Marky? And he was flabbergasted that I remembered his name. And I spun around to my wife, who was sitting at the table with me. I said, Deb, this is Marky Landsberg. And she had been part of the panel that chose the winner.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and it was just I think he was just very pleased that I remembered, and I got to take pictures with him, and I did a panel later on. I made him come up and
Nice.
Introduced him to everyone, told the story, and he's like a high-powered attorney now somewhere, and I'm still just writing
Nice.
comics. But yeah, so that was fun.
Very cool story. Very cool
Yeah,
story.
and it's funny just looking at that drawing. I was like, who drew like a 7-year-old version of Heisenberg from Breaking Bad with the hat and the glasses? Like I was just imagining,
I
if
had
you
never
wore that
made
hat,
connection.
just say my name. It's Howard Mackie, right? I mean, yeah, no, that's right. It's Howard Mackie. Mhm.
Yeah. Yep.
Mhm.
Now, Howard, if I could pull you back one more time to Spidey.
Sure.
Now, you worked on Web of, Spectacular, and Amazing. Now, I remember when all those were out, which was amazing. Now, did you have a different approach for each title so you could differentiate your storylines?
Well, actually, that thank you for asking that question, because that actually is how I got on this sidetrack of Ghost Rider, because I said I tried to write less Spider-Man at one point, because what happened was I was doing web for a while, and it was just at the beginning of my career, and at that point I had left staff as well, so I left staff with one book, which was Ghost Rider. And we had no idea how well it was going to sell. Right. And I wasn't sure I was going to actually be able to make a living at it, because it was one book. And unless you're selling really well, you don't get royalties. And anyway, I wasn't sure. As soon as I announced I was going off staff, other editors said, "Oh, you're going to have more time." One of those editors was Danny Fingeroth, who was the Spider-Man editor. And he offered me web. And so I was writing web and I was writing Ghost Rider, and I also it was my first foray into Marvel Comics Presents. That my buddy Terry Cavanaugh was the editor, and I was doing a Havoc story in Marvel Comics Presents. And one day I got my comps of all three stories. I got a web story and a Ghost Rider story and the Havoc story. And I just started flipping through. I don't tend to read my own work, and this is probably why, now that I think of it, once it's published, because all I'll see is the mistakes, or something that the damn editor changed that I didn't like. So I just don't read it. But I did read those three, and I realized to my horror that Peter Parker, Danny Ketch, and Alex Summers all sounded the same. They all were speaking with the same voice, which was mine, frankly. And I could almost, in my more morose periods, which will come upon me at times, I could see myself sounding like Danny, and then in my more flippant times, I could see myself, being Peter, but Alex shouldn't sound like either one of them. And so I thought, I can't do this until I figure out how to make this work in my head. So I quit web. I said, can't do it. And that's when, and oddly enough, Terry Cavanaugh wound up taking over web after I did. And just a few months passed. I don't remember exactly the timing, but suddenly Todd was leaving adjectiveless Spider-Man. And Danny Fingeroth, I was up in the office, and Danny Fingeroth came to me and said, "Hey, Howard, do you want to write Spider-Man?" And I said, "Danny, did you think the problem I had was the adjective? The web part?" I said, no. And he said, "No, I think you do a good job." And I wound up doing it again. And I stayed on adjectiveless for quite some time until then. And then we had, time where there were four of us. I was doing adjectiveless. I think Terry in the beginning was doing web, but then Todd DeZago took over. Tom DeFalco was doing. What was he doing? DeMatteis did Spectacular, and so Tom was doing Amazing.
Right.
And then all the bullshit that happened in the market and publishing and all that, and they pared it down to the 2 books, and I wound up doing both. In terms of keeping them different, which was your initial question, I'm not sure. I don't know if they came across that way or not. I was mostly, as I said, I was mostly focused on making sure everybody else that I was writing at that point, I was doing a lot of Ghostwriter and Blaze I had back in the book, and then I was doing some Gambit stuff, and as I've been reminded, some Mark Spector, Moon Knight
Right.
stuff, and I just wanted to make sure they didn't all sound the same, and hopefully that is the case.
All right, awesome. Thank you so
So-
much.
So Jabo's asking, I have to ask, did you ever write Spidey's quips? And he also wants to know if you have a favorite Marvel villain.
Well, I don't know. Isn't Spidey is always quips?
Yeah, it's all.
Yeah,
He's
he's very
the
So-
guy was born
so-
with quips.
Yeah, I'm guessing in the course of my, I don't know, I think it was close to 10 years. I wrote some version of Spider-Man. I may have had a quip or two in there, and as I have in my own life. And my favorite Spidey or Marvel villain.
Marvel villain.
Marvel villain, yeah.
Oh, I'm not sure. That's a really good question. Well, you know what? I'll go to Ghostwriter and the characters that I like. Scarecrow. I loved the Marvel version of Scarecrow because he was twisted and got me to explore parts of my own soul that were twisted as well. And so, yeah, he would be certainly one of my favorites to write.
Nice.
Oh, you wrote him so dark. It was gorgeous.
So,
Thank you.
and before we get to Ghostwriter, I did have one other question because I'm an Amalgam fan. So I loved. Yeah, see, he already knows.
Yeah.
So I thoroughly enjoyed what you did with Salvador LaRocca and Al Milgrom, and
Al Milgrom, Drew.
Al Milgrom.
Al Milgrom.
Al Milgrom. Is that I'm saying that right, Rich?
Yes,
Al,
you
yeah.
got it.
No, Drew. But
Yeah.
he had like a name, wasn't it? Battling Al Milgrom, was
Right.
Everybody had a name at some point.
Right, battling, right. And then you also did that with James Felder. So, you had a pretty daunting task. You're combining the Flash with Ghostwriter in a one shot. And from what I understand of asking other people, like we talked to Dan Chichester about when he worked on Assassins. We talked to Jim Ballant about being on Dark Claw with Larry Hama, like all this. So, what was that like knowing that you just had that one shot? And let's say like Amalgam got a second chance and they were like, hey, would you do more? Would you do it?
I'm not sure. I mean, I would have to go back and reread it, which I haven't done. And it was, it was a combination of Ghostwriter and the Demon from right. I'm trying to remember because didn't I have him talking like what's his name, Etrigan or yeah. I don't know. The funny thing about that book is I haven't thought about it for a while. And you said, was it hard? Anything you have a one shot at, that's not hard because it's limited expectations on it. I mean, I would say my best work was always done when there were diminished expectations, including Ghostwriter. They did not. I mean, and I've said this. I probably said this in our interview at Terrificon, Carrie. But sales tried to kill the Danny Ketch Ghostwriter. In the crib, they tried to put a pillow over the head of the project we were killing or we were creating because they didn't think it was going to succeed. It wasn't going to be a sales success.
Right.
But and we can go into that more if you want later. But in terms of Speed Demon, I don't know if I would revisit it or not. But again, when you have a one shot, it's relatively easy. I had the marching orders. It sounded like it would be fun.
Right.
And so I'm always cool with having fun.
Well, like I said, I loved it, especially because a lot of the amalgam stuff was one character, like two characters combined in one. It was Barry Allen, Ghost Rider, and Etrigan in one body, and you had some great villains.
I have to go back and reread it.
Yeah.
And now I have to say, I did a show in Mexico City. Again, it was probably 5 years ago. And suddenly people were showing up at my table. Every single person that came to my table had a copy of Speed Demon.
Yeah.
And it turned out that it had just been reprinted in Spanish down there. And so it literally, to this day, it's the most I've ever signed of that book.
Right. That's great.
And at the time, Howard, that was a big deal because DC and Marvel had never done something together to that magnitude before. And I don't think we're ever going to see it again.
No, and the only reason that came together like that was if you look at the masterminds behind the amalgam.
Mark was one of them.
Two people that were instrumental in my career. It was Mark Ronald and Mike Carlin.
Yeah.
Mike and Mark were also really good friends, and Mark was Mike's first boss as well, and they knew how to work together.
Right.
That's amazing.
Ron Mars
it was the perfect confluence of talent at the time that I don't think could happen again.
Yeah,
right.
Unfortunately not.
Yeah.
But
so we had a question come in asking, which comic series is your favorite to read for fun?
Do you still read comics for fun?
I don't read current comics. For the most part.
Okay.
I have read some. I read Ed Brisson's version of Ghost Rider, which really broke another cardinal rule of mine, in that I tend not to reread any character that I've written once I'm done. And the reason is because I do a lot of these or interviews of various kinds. And sometimes questions can be asked about something that is being done with characters. And, I don't ever want to say something that could be taken as criticism of the writer that comes after me. Just, that's bullshit when guys do that. I'm not a fan. But what happened was I was at New York Comic-Con, it was pre-zombie apocalypse.
Pre-COVID, yeah.
And it was right early on, I think it was Thursday or Friday. It was before the show was really cooking.
Right.
And so I just was walking around Artist Alley to see who was there. And I'm walking down one of the aisles, and there's a young guy sitting at a table with a big Ghost Rider banner behind him, and he had a stack of Ghost Rider number ones in front of him. I'm no dummy. I know comics. I know this must be a new Ghost Rider series. Not that one. No. This was the Ed Brisson's book that he did with Aaron Cooter.
Oh, okay.
And so he was talking to a fan, and I waited online behind the fan to introduce myself to Ed. And so it was my turn, and I said, Ghost Rider, I've always kind of liked that character. And he went, good. And, suddenly he's going into just vague, polite, dealing with apparently an aging family.
Right.
Mode. And I said, I've always liked the whole, you're using Danny Ketch. I've always liked Danny Ketch too. And, I'm saying a lot of that kind of stuff. I was completely setting him up.
Right.
And I stuck out my hand. And again, that's how it was pre-zombie apocalypse, because we shook hands. And he shook my hand, and I said, oh, by the way, I'm Howard Mackie. I used to write, and suddenly his grip just tightened on my. He said, what? I said, well, I used to write. He said, well, yeah. I know who you are, Howard. I said, he said, we're doing a lot of stuff with Danny and all characters. I said, okay, yeah, Ed, you're gonna have to let go of my thing.
Yeah.
And he gave me, he and Aaron both autographed a copy of their issue #1. And the next morning, and I wish somebody had a camera or a phone available to take a picture of me, because before the show started, I decided to do the thing that I don't ever do, which is I'm sitting behind my table with my banner behind me, which also features Ghost Rider and characters, and I'm reading the comic, and I actually quite enjoyed it. It was an interesting take. It was a progression, 20 years past where I had left off, and comics are different now than they were then.
Oh, yeah.
I thought they did a great job. So, yeah.
Actually, I had a question. I guess while we're looking at the comic, I did have another. It's actually a Ghost Rider question. So,
okay.
Leo, can we see some of the majesticness?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So the question I had, Howard, is that a lot of times when fans are reading a book, they kind of hear, especially a portrayal's voice, kind of like how Kevin Conroy, it's really hard to read Batman and you don't hear him, or Mark Hamill, because they're so associated with the character. So as a writer, when you were writing, was there any voice that I guess kind of was like Danny's voice? Like you said, essentially Danny was kind of you back in the day. So, but did you cast characters in your head?
Yes. Although, and people have asked, including my kids and their significant others now have asked me who I would cast as Danny. And I don't have a good answer for that. I can always cast Blaze, and currently with Blaze, I would cast Norm Reedus. He knows his way around a bike. Danny is tough because Danny, it would have to be a younger actor and probably somebody I'm not overly familiar with right now. But, in terms of the voice I was hearing when I was writing it, and yes, everything plays out in my head like a movie, and I'm basically taking notes. And it was, Danny was me. I mean, and so whenever Danny talks, you probably have to translate it with more of a Brooklyn accent, which I worked really hard at losing. Thank you very much.
Well done.
But I had, growing up, as I said, until I was 26, I lived in Brooklyn, and I had a very, very heavy Brooklyn accent. So yeah, and then in terms of casting, then later on, and this is why I think it's great that Sam Elliott was cast in the Ghost Rider movie, which that's about the best thing I can say about the Ghost Rider. Because I know that when I write a plot, I give notes about a new character to the artist, and I know that I gave the art that he should resemble Sam Elliott on some level, primarily because my wife always had a crush on Sam Elliott, and he's just ultimately cool.
Definitely.
If I were going to cast Caretaker, I don't think I mentioned that he was cast as Caretaker, but if I was going to cast Caretaker today, actually, I think I would cast Jeffrey Dean Morgan. I think he would be
That's
great.
a great call.
Yeah, he happens to live in the same town that I live in, which is great.
And it's so funny you say that, because at Terrificon, I was rooming with Carrie, and she's a big Ghost Rider, but she'd never seen any of the Nick Cage movies. So I showed her a clip from the first one, and her face is kind of this mix of what the hell and that's not Ghost Rider. And then I showed her another clip from the second one, which I actually, funny enough, kind of prefer a little bit more than the first
I've
one.
not seen the second one. So.
Yeah, it's fine. Howard, don't.
Yeah, you're not missing
Stay in
anything.
your lane,
You know
my
where they
man.
lost me was the brothers that they wrote and directed it. They in
Yeah.
one of the interviews that they took great pride in saying that they refused to look at any of the comic books. So
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
basically, fuck
But-
you.
But at least the you know, she was like, okay, this is a little better, but she's just like, he's Danny, but it's Johnny Blaze, but he has all of Danny's powers. Just like, what a ripoff.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Like, and she even
Well,
said
by
that
not
to,
casting, not writing Danny into the movies, they didn't have to pay me anything. So
yeah, so
How many
no
guys
love
are you
there.
Next time.
I have one last question, Howard, which is non-Ghost Rider related before I let Carrie totally take over.
sure.
Yeah.
Now, you were involved. Now, it went for 3 years. I've tried to tell these guys about it, but they're not old enough. I was born in 71 and right across the bay in Queens from you, Howard.
Where in Queens?
Oh, Flushing.
Okay.
7016 Utopia Parkway.
Okay.
Yeah, I still remember. You were instrumental, I guess, in or at least in special projects, including the New Universe line.
Yes.
And the only thing that survived from that at this point is Star Brand. Can you tell us? Can you tell these guys like what the New Universe line was? Because they don't seem to know every time I mention it.
Seriously, none of them know what the New
No.
Nope.
I have a small memory of it, but very small.
I could learn if I looked it up.
Yeah. Don't bother. The New Universe was Jim Shooter's way of trying to redefine the Marvel Universe into a separate universe. And what he wanted it to be was more realistic. So that, you know, the tagline was "The world outside your window," and you know, it was we used to talk about this, you know, as only comic book nerds can do when they're now working professionals, is start talking about how all of this stuff would work realistically. You know, I used to say the best thing the Avengers or the FF could do for New York City would be move the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, they're constantly attacked in New York City and everything is
Destroyed frequently.
getting destroyed, and that gave birth to Damage Control comic by Dwayne McDuffie, which was brilliant. But
See, I do remember Damage Control.
yeah, but the New Universe, and it ran for 36 issues actually, and I came on after close to the first year's worth of stories happened. And it just, you know, as a matter of fact, I follow a New Universe Facebook group, and there are people that talk about their favorite New Universe books, and there are a couple in there that I look and go, how the hell did that even fit in there? Spitfire and the Troubleshooters, and you know,
Was it DP7 and Saga?
well, DP7 was one of the best, and again, it was written by Mark Grunwald, so you know, I may be a little prejudiced, but I think it was one of the most cohesive books in the group, and but it was a really good experiment that quickly went off the rails, in my opinion, and then through a series of things happened, you know, Jim Shooter eventually got fired, and I had inherited, I was promoted to full editor, and I was told, do what you can to save these books, because they wanted sales. And so I made massive changes. And, you know, I went along with the philosophy of the world outside your window no longer exists once, you know, if we were in the Marvel universe, the first time Galactus lands and starts trying to or the Earth, or somebody sees Ghost Rider, you know, racing down the streets of New York City. It's, you know, it's no longer the impact, and they've explored a little bit of that in some of the movies after. Well, in Endgame, they explored it quite a bit after everybody disappeared for 5 years. I mean, it's got to have some impact, but the intent of the new universe with Starbrand and
Right.
everything else, and quite frankly, I mean, look, I was the editor. We really, turned over. I mean, not only did we turn that apple cart over, we started throwing the apples at a brick wall just to try to. We weren't trying to create buzz and and get some sales, and we did it for a little while, and then it ran its course at the end of 3 years, and at the top of every one of the last issues, it was my idea to come up with number 36 and a 36 issue limited series, and they all went off to the sunset. But I guess Starbrand is still around on some level.
Yep. That's the funny thing. I just did a quick little search and kind of analyzed, and I was like, wow, I've read things. It's like stories, characters, and whatnot that were universe, and I was like, I had no idea. So sneaky.
Yeah.
Very sneaky.
Pretty cool. Thanks for sharing, Howard.
Sure.
Yeah. See, Rich is good now. Rich, can you stop bringing it up now?
Yeah, I'm good. Well, now we've heard from the man himself.
It's real.
Yeah, I had some original. I think I have some Starbrand art in there too.
What
Didn't a few
on
people
that
lose
whole
their jobs, Howard? In that,
What's that?
Because that was Jim Shooter's baby. Didn't a few people even lose their jobs because he didn't like the way it was going?
Oh yeah, I mean that's ultimately. As a matter of fact, when I got the promotion to take over the new universe right before Jim left Marvel, or was asked to leave Marvel, and I started preparing my resume the next day. Because as a matter of fact, first what I did was I went to Tom DeFalco, who was second in command at the time, and asked him if he could prevent me from getting promoted. and his line to me was, the thing of it is, Mr. Howard, you're fucked either way. And so I got the promotion, and shortly thereafter, I mean, it was within weeks of my getting the promotion that Jim was fired, and suddenly I could do whatever I wanted.
Right, and then you were like, "Phew!"
Yeah, and first thing I did was I brought John Byrne in to do Starbrand.
Oh,
Big move.
And this was right after that was his return to Marvel.
Right,
having done Man of Steel at DC.
Nice,
crazy.
Well done.
So I have one other question, and just because it's the season, it's the Halloween. It's the time where a lot of people like to watch horror movies. Are you a horror movie fan? And if okay,
I am not. I know. It's funny. I get that question a lot.
Damn, I thought it was me original.
People assume that I would be because of the type of stuff I. No, that shit is all up here. I don't need somebody else's darkness. I got my own percolating. And I mean, I obviously I watch some horror movies, but
right.
And none of it does anything.
Do you have any favorites that you rewatch in this time or like this season?
I mean, I honestly, I really love The Werewolf by Night on Disney Plus. I don't know if you've seen the black and white. I hear they're colorizing it or something, which just
that doesn't.
Oh, stupid. But
that's a little weird.
Not necessary.
No, I mean, I'm more likely to read horror than to see. I'm big Stephen King fan, but like early Stephen King. I really, really liked. I'm just trying to think. If I look around my office, I would be able to. But no, I don't. Okay. I used to get scared by the Wizard of Oz when I was a wee lad. But
the monkeys in the trees.
I was a big science fiction movie fan. I found that's up, but I mean, I was older by the time. I'm older by the time all the slasher flicks came out, and I've seen a few of them, and they did nothing for me. Right. Although Scream, I genuinely enjoyed because it did scare me. The opening scene in particular, and I've read the screenplay as well, and I absolutely understand why they bought that screenplay. You read the screenplay and that opening scene, you go, Jesus, this thing is pretty close to perfect. But I was tricked into watching it by Todd DeZago, because
Oh, okay.
he said, "Oh, you got to see this movie. It's hysterical." And what he meant was it was hysterical if you've watched all of the other like 1980s slasher flicks,
Right.
which I hadn't. And I remember my wife and I, we had 2 small kids, and we lived in the middle of the woods in this big old house that the room that she and I were watching movie in was like kind of jutted out. It was all windows all around, and we started watching it, and we were kind of scared to get up and go to the bathroom by ourselves. So I did actually enjoy that, and I did see some of the humor in it as well.
Well, as long as you didn't say you'll be right back, you would have been fine.
Yeah, well, exactly.
You know, the rules, Howard. The rules are very clear.
See, and if I watched enough of those movies, I would know what the rules were. Right. But I'm from Brooklyn, and none of that shit would work on me.
Well, you hung out in cemeteries. You were like, I'm good.
Yeah, yeah. See, and that's my point. Is a lot of that stuff. I've gone through worse stuff. That's why I want to know where in Queens. I want to see if I had almost gotten killed there or not. But no, I went to Flushing. Flushing. I used to play hockey, and we played one team there, and we just got into fights. But yeah.
Just speaking of getting scared, just to let you know, your run of Ghost Rider, that was in my pull list, and absolutely loved it when it first came out. And I was fairly young; I was late teens, and I remember picking up the glow in the dark cover, but I did not know it was glow in the dark. I wake up in the middle of the night, I see this flaming skull in my room, scared the utter crap out of me.
I have had people come to me at conventions with that cover, with that book for me to sign, and this hasn't happened in a while, but at least once it happened. I said, "Oh, right, and doesn't it look cool in the dark?" And they said, "What do you mean?" And they did not know it was glow in the dark.
Wow,
never ever seen it, and that's close. I was never a big fan of the what they referred to as enhanced covers, but they were gimmick covers.
Yeah, that's gimmicks.
Drive sales, and I just didn't. They were the so-called holograms where you trying to bend it exactly right to see or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember walking into Bobby Chase, who was my editor's office, and she said, "Howard, I want to show you the cover for Ghost Rider number 15." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "It's going to be, look, it's glow in the dark. It's going to be going." And I said, "Really? Come on, it's going to be some."
Who reads comics in the dark?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And she said, no, it's really cool. I said, "Come on, Bobby, really?" And we went. There was like one room we had in office. It was called the Lucy Room. It had a light box that you went in, you turned off the lights, and you lit up the light box, and you could trace stuff. And she and basically it was an enhanced closet. Her assistant, and I went in there, and she turned off the lights, and it just popped out there, and I go, "Oh shit, that's awesome!" So
nice.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite covers in the entire run.
Well, you can only imagine Carrie's face when she got it signed. Like, to say she was beaming, I literally thought all of her hair was just
I was there. I don't need to.
Yeah, and one other thing I will also say is I've seen the panel that she recorded. That was you and Terry and Dan.
Right.
Boy, that was something. I'm just gonna.
Were we okay?
Oh no, you guys were good. It's just, Carrie, why don't you take this one? You were the one who kind of saved the panel with your questions.
Oh, absolutely.
It was just really focused on Moon Knight and things that none of you guys had written.
I was surprised at that. I think we all were. I mean, I think the interviewer was a really nice guy, but it was very focused on. He obviously loved Moon Knight. Even Terry Kavanaugh's one of my best friends, and he said, "Howard, why am I on this panel?" And I've run into that before. on panels.
There was
It's
just
I sometimes wish they would ask us. I would have had a thought or two of how to do it, and a panel can be made or broken by the moderator. And,
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
And I remember all three of us, Terry, Dan, and myself, we were very pleased when you stepped up to the microphone, at least twice, at least, right?
actually, the moderator got to the point where he was like, "You don't have to sit down. You can just keep standing there if you have more questions." And I was like, "No, I'll get my steps in." But
Yeah, and it was so funny because he said that, and I feel like he was trying to be funny, but his face was just like, "Oh God, this girl again." Like,
Oh.
do you want to just do my job for her? I was like, "By God, please."
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I think all three of these men at this were like, "Yeah, can we switch? You man the
It
camera,
sounds
and
like
she'll
Terry
finish
could've
up."
done a better job.
I mean, Terry, Dan, and I, we've known each other for quite some time, and we can play off each other really well. Sometimes all you have to do is say hello, and we could have taken it from there. But he was a big Moon Knight fan, my recollection, and he really wanted to focus on Moon Knight. But
3 issues.
We were talking to Dan the other night on Sunday, and he was just like, "Yeah, I even told him I didn't write any," and he just kept going back to it. And then we were like, "Yeah, okay." So we brought up, like, I guess Terry wasn't really involved with Midnight Suns and stuff so much, but other dark things. But then they kind of went completely like something that none of you guys are into. I'm sorry, dear person who did the panel, but you don't start a question with, "And though none of you were involved in any part of this series,"
right?
What do you think
I thought of taking a bathroom break at that point. I didn't remember that. But okay, you weren't involved.
I had some questions. You brought this up a couple of times. The Cypress Hill Cemetery. Okay. I was born on Halloween. We lived close to a cemetery. But I grew up in a town of like 600 people, so it was like the size of a city block or two.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I had 600 people on my street, if not at least one of the apartment buildings that I lived in. But
yeah, I when I was initially reading, I was looking at stuff. I'm like, these people are chasing each other all over the cemetery. How are they not just seeing each other? How are they? And then I looked up like the size, and that's bigger than some towns that I've lived in. The cemetery is.
It's huge. I mean, it goes. It kind of strides 2 boroughs. It's part of it's in Brooklyn. And it's not all. It's kind of generic. The Cypress Hills Cemetery part, they're kind of broken into other names, and frequently by religions. There's a Jewish part of the cemetery and Catholic, and that kind of stuff. But yeah. So your question.
Oh, see, this is the thing. We couldn't hang out in our cemeteries because, like I said, they were small. Cop drives by, he can just see the entire thing, and there were no tombs or anything like that involved. So, I mean, what do you do when you go hang out? Were you hanging out just like the kids in the comics and just like chilling out, drinking beer? You said you're the guy, the caretaker with the shotgun chasing you around.
Right. Well, that was okay. Just to give you a little sense of location, I assume you've all seen the Spider-Man movies, the latest ones. Okay, so the first with his name just
Tom Holland,
Tobey Maguire.
First movie, and then the last one, they did a couple of establishing shots of his high school. Okay,
yes,
that's Franklin K. Lane High School in Brooklyn. I graduated from that high school. Which I was as surprised as anybody. I was sitting in the theater in the first movie, and I was, shit, that's my high school. And the elevated train line run, and it's in the foreground. I used to take that train to the city every day when I was still living in Brooklyn and working in Manhattan. And if you can envision that that establishing shot of the high school, there's the sports fields are in the front, and there's bleachers right off to the left side of the screen, and they had to have CGI'd it out. On the other side of the bleachers, is the Cypress Hill Cemetery. Okay, and and way behind that high school and the cemetery is a place called Forest Park, which I touch upon in a Ghost Rider book. But he also, that happens to be Forest Hills, Queens,
Right.
happens to be where Uncle Ben is buried in one of those cemeteries, and they were all interconnected.
Mhm.
So when we used to want to go to Forest Park or go sleigh riding or something like that, we had to take a shortcut. The easiest shortcut was through this Cypress Hill Cemetery, right behind high school, and that was where that caretaker with the shotgun, with a rock salt in it was. And you know, and it was just a risk you took. He also had a really nasty German Shepherd that he would sick on. You just had to be fast and be able to get over a fence very quickly. And so often you did. But we would also go, there was probably a half a mile in the other direction was another part of Cypress Hill Cemetery. And that's where my friend Mark, he lived there because their house, his dad was the caretaker of that part of the cemetery, and their house was dead center in the cemetery.
In the
And
cemetery?
yeah. And
Wow.
we used to, he had a great story. I remember this, yeah, it's a long time ago. He came home from trick-or-treating, and he was dressed as Dracula. So he had, you know, all white makeup on, and, you know, and his mom had made him this elaborate outfit with a black suit and, you know, cape,
Right.
a whole bit. He comes in, he hears his mom say, "Mark, you were supposed to take the dog out." Yeah, okay. And he said, "Shit, do it now." So he goes walking the dog in the cemetery, you know, after dark, and there's a guy who was drinking in the cemetery. In the old days, and I'm sure it's not PC, we would refer to them as bums. And this guy, and you know, prior to that, he would have been called a hobo. Yeah, but he's pretty drunk, and he's like just sitting against one of the mausoleums with something in a paper bag.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, you know, Count Dracula comes walking up. He apparently almost wet his pants and just reached and took off.
Run.
And I mean, there are stories that were in my Ghost Rider run that were influenced by weird events. I'm not a guy that really buys into a lot of supernatural stuff. I mean, I'm a you know, I need to experience it kind of guy. I experienced
I understand
some
that.
freaky stuff in the cemetery. I have to say that
Thanks.
stuff that
Thanks, Mulder.
I don't have explanations for. I'm sure there are explanations. I just don't have them.
Right.
And you know, so yeah, I mean, we used to just hang out there all the time. You know, always after dark. Always after dark, because that was when you know, especially in Mark's part of the cemetery, because he knew his dad wasn't going to come and you know, roust us.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah.
Any one of those experiences you'd like to share that you said you can't explain? Or?
There were times when we would, you know, late at night, and you're looking down a path, you know, kind of, and if you did your research on Cypress Hill Cemetery, not only is it big, it's very old. So
Right.
there are tombstones and mausoleums. I mean, there's a part of, you know, again, it's not referred to as Cypress Hill Cemetery, but it connects to the cemetery that Houdini's buried in. And,
Right.
you know, and you know, Mae West and, you know, other people, famous people all buried, because it's an old part of Brooklyn.
Mhm.
But so if you imagine just looking down at this long path between mausoleums and tombstones and all that, and you know, the tree, you know, is all overgrown, but you can see down the path, and the moon is out, and you know, full moon probably, and we're sitting there, and we were probably a little high, and looking down the path, and there's a guy, big guy, just at the top of the hill with his hands on his protruding belly, and he's got a top hat on, and he's just rocking back and forth and looking at us. And we go, there's a bunch of us, we're pretending to be brave Brooklyn boys. And we shoot down there and we can't find him. There's no one there, not a sign. And my explanation, and it really scared the crap out of us, because then we looked down the other direction and we could see somebody moving, at the other end of the path where we just came from. My explanation is that it was probably trees that were just, catching the light in the right direction and just swaying back and forth. But I don't know. I mean, we would hear weird noises. We were hanging out one time, and all of a sudden a light just, started shining on somebody, but with no light source anywhere around. It's a pitch black cemetery, so you would be able to see. I mean, if I had seen enough of these movies today and it was a red dot, I would assume there was a sniper there. But this was before laser targeting, and it was not red, and the light would just bounce around to each person. And could not find the light source at all. So that, or you're sitting in, a couple of you are sitting on the steps of a very old mausoleum. Okay, big, a crypt, type mausoleum, and all of a sudden, the very heavy metal door just opens up behind you. Nobody waited to find out what
Nope.
We I don't care how brave we thought we were. We weren't that brave. So it was more things like that.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm good. That was a great. I feel like that's a great story to end on. I was like, the spooky stories of Howard Mackie.
Yeah, there you go.
Before we wrap things up, Carrie, did you have any other questions that you would like to ask the Honorable Howard Mackie?
I remember you're still having another interview with him, so I know you're going to save some for later.
No, I don't have another interview set up with him yet, but I would love to. So,
foreshadowing.
So perhaps
writing tools.
I'll be sending you an email about this later. But no, one thing I wanted to ask, and I'm not focusing everything on Ghostwriter, is back in 2001, you were Writer X.
Yes,
and you maintained that for a long time. And I don't know, how hard was that to keep with? I mean, because the internet was starting to be a thing, and so I was wondering if you could explain a little bit, because you obviously understand more behind how it was working than I did, but it was when they were trying to revamp the X various series.
Yeah, it was my idea, actually, because it was
really?
right at the time that I felt, and this was more personal observation, that comics were either being sold or not based upon the names in the credits. Okay. And that it was strictly, there was a cult of personality that was developing. And, it was, the direct market had fully taken over, and based upon what we do, you solicit comics ahead of time. And if it was the right name or group of names, and at that time it was very focused on writers instead of artists, book could, either, sell, like hotcakes right out, or just die right away. And I wanted to write, and I thought, an X book, and specifically an odd kind of X book, because it was not a traditional X book, was the ideal place to experiment, to see if my if my assumption was correct. And so I came up with the idea of the Brotherhood, and it, we promote, I wanted to write it anonymously. And so because it was an X book, we called me Writer X. And Marvel was pretty good. There were very few people that actually knew, even up at Marvel. I mean, the editor, obviously, and his assistant, and I actually even what's his name? The artist who I just communicated with, Leonardo Manco. Is that his name? Anyway, he didn't know who it was. He just got plots from X. I mean, I made sure, when you do a plot, typically I put my name on every page with my phone number so the artist can call me. No, his instructions were if he had questions, he was to call or contact the editors, and they would relay information through me. And it proved to be the case that because the book actually did pretty well. It sold. The first few issues sold really well, and then unfortunately, I don't know if you remember when it came out. It was in 2001. It launched in the late summer of 2001, and it was about super powered, mutant terrorists. And then 9/11 came, and actually the editor called me, and I said, "Oh, I was just about to call you." And he said, "Oh, why?" I said, "Because I can't do this right now."
Yeah.
And it's so good because we don't want to do it anymore. And so that's why it was canceled. And but the buzz around that book with everybody trying to guess who writer X was phenomenal. And it proved my point because it was they were guessing. A bunch of people guessed me, but then other people guessed everyone from Joe Quesada to Todd McFarlane to Neil Gaiman, which I took, high praise, quite frankly. Okay, yeah, going back to the horror thing, I can read anything by Neil Gaiman. The Sandman stuff blew me away. But that to me proved my point that I have to say, Rich Johnson, who does Bleeding Cool News, he always assumed it was me. And I happened to meet him a few years ago in London. And I said, "Well, why? Why did you think?" He said, "Well, because, there was a lot of ... dots in it, an ellipse." And I do. It's my, when I'm writing dialogue, I try to write the way people speak. And nobody speaks in complete sentences. We certainly don't speak with semicolons. And I rarely have full stops in what I say. So, my speech pattern is a series of ellipses, and that was conveyed onto the pages of the Brotherhood. But it appears in everything else that I write, and you will not, if you go back and reread anything I wrote, you will not be able to unsee it now. So, anyway, that's how it happened, and that's how it ended too, because of 9/11.
Okay.
Right.
Well,
Wow.
that's kind of depressing, but at the same time, rather
Yeah.
cool. Like the story's cool. 9/11.
Yeah.
It was a very
How does
cool
Howard
experience.
Mackie spend his days now?
How does he spend his days? Well, I'm an old dude. I do a lot of writing. I have other projects in the works. I have my buddy Terry Kavanaugh and I have a side gig going on where we do some custom comics work for people. We have a thing called Inksmith, where we will do custom. We'll turn you into the superhero of your own story, especially if you have way too much money.
What about for those of us that don't have enough money?
Yeah, well, you gotta.
What about the economically
You're out of
challenged?
luck.
Yeah. But we've got a couple of gigs going for
That's
some
cool.
international companies where we're doing IP development.
Oh, nice.
And then
Nice.
I'm a grandpa, baby.
Oh yeah.
My 3-year-old grandson can identify Ghost Rider very easily. He's
That's
much
dope.
more into Ghost
That's
Rider
good parenting.
Nice.
What's that?
That's good
That's
parenting.
Good
Yeah.
grandparenting.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah. No, I'm doing okay.
Awesome.
And then
That's
I do
awesome.
I do a lot of conventions. Actually, too many sometimes. I'm thinking of kind of reeling that in right now.
But you'll stay on the Terrificon circuit, right?
I'm not sure about this year. I love Terrificon. It's one of my favorite shows. My wife loves it as well. The time I haven't been invited back, so and I only go to shows to which I'm invited. And which is why I will not be appearing at New York Comic Con this week, because they invited me once and have offered to let me purchase a table every other time, which I'm not interested in. I actually was supposed to appear this year signing with a group called Desert Wind Comics, who were going to have a bunch of terrific people at their time. Everyone, Carl Potts, Alan Milgram, who we were speaking about earlier. I think Jim Shooter is going to be there. So I was supposed to, but there was a conflict with my with my real life. So and I hate going to New York Comic Con. It's overly crowded petri dish, which I'm not interested in bringing anything back home right now.
Fair enough.
There you go.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Well, we'll let you go, Howard. Thank you so much for your time.
Seriously,
tonight.
thank
Absolute
you.
Pleasure.
Oh, my pleasure. And Carrie, you
Yes.
send me an email. We can figure something out.
So before we let you go, where do you like people interacting with you on social media?
I'm really only on Facebook. I even before it became X, I thought Twitter was a cesspool, and more so now. So I'm really only I'm an old dude, so I do Facebook. It's Howard Mackie Writer. There is another Howard Mackie account that was mine, but I haven't looked at it in 2 years. So Howard Mackie Writer, and I will respond to and answer all questions that have to do with comic books.
All right.
Nice.
Awesome.
Already sent a friend request.
Okay.
I mean, what?
Thank you so much, Howard. You have an awesome evening.
Seriously, thank you so much, Howard.
Okay.
Keep up that good
Thanks,
time,
Howard.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll talk to you, Harry. Bye.
All right.
New York, New York.
Oh, that was
Somebody's
awesome.
got a date in a cemetery later. All right.
I'm so happy.
It's time for news.
News Splash
Yeah.
Pages.
It's the news on Splash Pages Tuesday night.
Yeah, it's wow. Singing Jar Jar? Oh boy.
Ooh.
So here's
All
the
right.
thing, guys, with the news. We gotta talk about this, and we're gonna be talking about this. But Jesus Christ, variant covers. What is wrong with you people?
There's a
Nice.
lot of
You need
variants.
one for everything.
I wish they would
Every
listen to
single
you.
goddamn comic that's released has like 40 variant covers that come out with it. And I'm sorry, I don't mind. I've got a science of click, paste, done. But damn, dude, we had to actually remove some of the pre-established pictures to fit the news in this week.
Wow.
And,
That
and
is
I
a
tried to
lot.
combine things, but with the variant, you don't want to, yeah. So
I do
but
think
that
it's the
carries me over the
downfall of
news.
it was the downfall in the 90s, and I feel like it's going to be the downfall of the 2000s.
Yeah, I kind of,
yeah.
you know what? I kind of agree on Jar like that. Like I for me, I don't mind a really great variant if it's something like how Leo is just the second Lee Bermejo has a variant. Leo's like, what? Oh my God, yes, purchase.
I would just like to remind you guys, we're an hour and a half in, and we have done no news or gone over the comic yet.
Well, we kind of went over
all right.
Let's just get the news
point
done.
it
You're
out.
right.
Just point it out. I'm trying to move it forward.
All right,
Yeah.
let's
I like to
do some
chit-chat.
news roulette.
Well, okay, so I
Spin the
know
wheel.
these are not in order, but since we're talking about variant covers, I'm going to kick it off real quick. Due to the anniversary of Avengers, Disney is going to come out with special variant covers of Mickey Mouse and his friends.
They've been doing it for a while, haven't they?
Well,
It's gonna
these are new.
Oh, they're new.
These are new. There's going to be a series of 3 coming out.
Mhm.
And so this is celebrating Avengers. It's recreating some of the classic covers. And
See, these kind of variants I'm kind of okay with.
okay, you say that now,
Uh-huh.
but so it's celebrating the anniversary of Avengers, but yet these are variant covers that are going to be on Spider-Man.
What?
What?
Yes.
What's
How
the
does-
Avengers again? That looks like the Avengers, not Spider-Man.
Yes,
I mean,
these are going to be variant covers on
Iron Minnie
Spider-Man.
Mouse is kind of funny.
Yeah, I keep gravitating back to that myself. I'm not gonna lie. And Goofy is Thor. I feel like there's something you can do with that.
Yeah, he's definitely worthy.
Yup.
That hand is in the wrong position, though.
Is it?
That did not sound right.
At the bottom. It's just weird. Sorry.
So
Pinchy.
so celebrating Avengers 60th anniversary.
Mhm.
The variant covers will be on Amazing Spider-Man 41, 43, and 45.
It's still weird to have that on an Avenger cover on a Spider-Man book, but
Exactly.
whatever.
That's why I think they're throwing, just variant covers just to have variant covers.
Well, because you know what that reminded me of? Do you remember when we covered Disney doing those Disney variants, but that were pins
Yeah.
that they were going to release? That
Right.
kind of reminds me of that, but this is like I'd rather see some of those covers as variants. Remember we had like
Well, they weren't they already? Didn't we go over that like a couple of months ago when you brought up the pins? We were like, oh, well, weren't they already
They've
doing
done covers
comics?
of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've done covers before, but like I would rather see some of those pins as covers versus those are cute, but it's just I don't know. I feel like I agree with Leo. Like it just seems rather like, well, let's just get this out.
Well, I appreciate that they're at least homaging classic covers.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
nice to see.
it's good work. It's just
Although I
odd that it's-
agree that it shouldn't be for Spider-Man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it should be for Avengers, but
Yeah,
Howard
exactly.
Mackie accepted my friend request. I mean, continue, please.
So yeah, I'll continue with more stupid variants. So because of the ever popular Life Day, we're gonna get some
They do
Star
this every
Wars.
year with Star Wars now.
Actually, if I may, Leo, Jard,
Yeah.
you're right. That was a tradition started with the infamous Star Wars holiday special. So from the 70s, they've been Life Day is essentially Star Wars is Christmas.
Oh,
Like-
I know that. I know where it's come from, and I forced you all to watch the holiday special one year.
You didn't know, you did not. We watched the Boba Fett segment, and that is one of the few redeemable parts of that. The part that I got vetoed for is I wanted us all to watch B. Arthur singing in a cantina in Mos Eisley. But, we were worried about copyrights, so we just watched
that was
anime.
true. That was true.
Tom and Jenny agreed that Donald back on the Avengers one makes a good Hulk. That lady looks scary in that one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's Anakin's
Oh,
mom.
yeah,
That's just some
Anakin's
sinister
mom.
shit right there.
She looks like she's about to beat him with a glass of.
That looks like she's about to poison that Banta milk.
Yeah, before she got gruesomely murdered by the Tusken Raiders.
Good times.
They were scared.
Yeah. And then
It's supposed to be a kids movie. That's what happens when Disney takes over kids.
Well, it was
Star
was
Wars.
kind
They
of
kill
a
off the mom.
It was kind of a kids movie when Anakin decided to do genocide against the Tusken Raiders, right?
You got to kill Bambi's mom. You got to kill Anakin's aunt.
Well, he had to have practice for the rest of his genocide. It's just
That's
Yeah.
right.
All right, so more other variants, right? Right? Like
We
I
might
was like,
get
we're
there.
we're taking a dark turn.
who else variants this week?
We're gonna bend this bullet back to more variants.
More
Oh,
variants.
yes.
Well, okay.
What do you got?
Carrie, you want to take over for the what storyline had variants next?
Oh, I can yeah, let me get up here.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to start with the ski chalet.
Oh, that's me. I get to
gee.
thank you, Drew, for handing this out to me.
You're welcome.
Hold on a second.
Why?
Marvel Comics reveals weirdest variant covers yet with new ski chalet. I'm glad you guys all have taken the liberty of teaching me how to say that word without knowing that I didn't.
You're
know how to
welcome,
say
buddy.
That word.
Yeah.
Line is superheroes hit the slopes. Winter is right around the corner, and many of our favorite Marvel Comics characters are going to suit up for some snow-filled fun in new ski chalet variant covers. At first glance, we thought these might be some sort of promotional tie-in with Winter Gear Company, but nope. The publisher has enlisted an all-star lineup of artists for these frosty new variant covers, which will be featured on select Marvel titles throughout December. The first batch showcases Captain America, Storm, Spider-Boy, and more, all decked out in new winter apparel designs and enjoying all kinds of cold weather activities. Today, another couple have followed, this time starring Mary Jane Watson and Spider-Woman. Will you be picking up any of these ski chalet variant covers when they arrive in comic book stores later this December?
Bum, bum, bum.
Will ya?
No.
Okay. Probably not.
Who is
Why?
this for?
Yeah. Who is
Okay.
this for?
I need to say though, that Storm cover looked like pretty fucking cool. I'm not gonna lie. That one, I thought that one was pretty dope.
What the hell was Spider-Woman carrying? I could not figure out what the hell
She's
was
carrying
on
a
her
snowboard.
Wait,
That was a snowboard?
And this one is gonna sell out simply
That's good.
because it's
J. Scott Campbell.
yeah. So, Mary Jane, sexy. I was like, yeah, we've seen this, Jake.
Yeah.
Move on. But this is, I'm sorry, what?
Oh, yeah, she does have a snowboard.
Oh, now I see it.
Not really
Yeah.
dressed for winter.
And nobody else was looking at the snowboard. The
I was.
Yeah. But it's see, I think this might be the most unnecessary of the covers. I'm like, why? Like, why?
Spider-Boy?
I mean,
Or the
if
Spider-Woman?
those stories had like a winter theme in it, okay. But I don't get it.
it's a yeah.
Well,
Moving
I mean, what was the swimsuit?
No. No, Leo, don't even try to connect.
Remember the
defend,
90s failed.
whatever.
90s
Moving
failed.
on.
Before we move on, Jar Jar, when we cover this again, because they'll do this again next year, just remember the T is silent in chalet, just like Perron. Perron.
Okay. Also, Leo,
Olivier Perron.
Oh, Perron.
Yeah.
Okay, Leo, why did it just sound like you were in a drive-through menu? I kind of thought it was like, all right, welcome to Splash Pages. Take a number 2 with medium fries, a shake, and
That's it.
I was all computerized.
For a
yeah,
second.
you went AI on us for a minute. It was like AI pond. I was like, nope, thank you.
Well, that's the tie-in. I wanted that to be the next tie-in for the McDonald's tie-in with Loki.
Wasn't that? Hold on, that's a spoiler, isn't it? I don't know.
Yes.
Are we allowed
No.
to talk?
No.
Thanks.
I'm wondering if they're going to have some kind of promotional thing.
No, they
going
do.
on.
They
Oh,
they
do
are.
they?
That's why I mentioned it.
Oh, okay. What's the
It's not part of our
thing?
storyline, but
Yeah, Jar Jar, whenever you go to McDonald's now, if you get sauce, it says Loki on the top of their
Yeah,
sauce.
it's Loki sauce. So it's you think you're getting sweet and sour? Trick, it's barbecue.
Oh, you're doing that. I was like,
Oh.
what's happening?
Yeah, apparently they really transformed a McDonald's in Brooklyn to film all that stuff. So
Oh, really?
Well,
2 days.
well, come on. I mean, Don't you remember they literally built a White Castle for Harold and Kumar just for the hell of it, and actual people showed up. They're like, "Yeah, can we get burgers?" And they're like, "No, yeah, we got real food." So anything's possible with Hollywood.
Yes.
Okay, next variant, Carrie.
Stormbreakers.
Oh, I get to do that again. Thank you, Drew.
You're welcome.
Marvel's Stormbreakers spotlight Marvel's greatest icons in new variant covers. Throughout November, we did December, now we're in November. See the current class of Marvel's Stormbreakers turn out epic takes on Marvel's A-list heroes, most of which will adorn the covers of the characters' respective solo series. Timeless and dynamic, these new portraits of Spider-Man, Captain America, Fantastic Four, Captain Marvel, Luke Cage, Blade, Moon Knight, and Ghost Spider, who I have never heard of until now.
Spider-Gwen.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Showcase the raw creativity and inventiveness of Marvel's elite artists. God, I'm speaking in tongues. Each month, Marvel's Stormbreakers bring their incredible talents to your favorite comic series and characters and flex their skills in exciting themed variant cover collections. The current group of artists includes, I'm going to mess up every single name here. Ready? Elena Casagrande, Nick Klein, Jan Bazuldua, Chris Allen, Martin Cocola, Lucas Wernick, Federico Vicente, and CF Villa. Each of these artists embody the raw talent and creative potential to shatter the limits of the visual storytelling in today's comics. Check the November's 8 Stormbreakers variant covers now and pre-order them at your LCS today.
Okay, that was
Crazy Eddie.
But I mean, those make sense to me. I was like, again, they're all cool. And I'm glad these up-and-comer artists are getting their shot, but I'm like, okay, it's still like nice. I'm fine.
I think at least they're with their respective, as it says, with the respective series. That makes sense for a variant. But you don't need 20 variants for every issue, I think is our biggest problem. Like,
Jar, I think literally if you can have a book that's just variants, to me, that's saying that we're going a little overboard. Like I remember that for, I think it was Dark Knight 3, the Frank Miller story. I was like, they had, this is a book, just variants. And I'm like, and then they literally did an alphabet. And I'm just like, are you out of your fucking mind? Like 26 variants for what?
Well, like, okay, so you made fun of me earlier because of the Lee Miho.
No, whoa. First thing is, I never make fun. I point out patterns. Okay.
Well, anyway, with his though, you know, I find it's true art, you know, and he does release art books, which is collections of his variant covers. So that I could see, you know, buying, which I have.
And buddy, every year I tell you, if you stop buying these things, you give us who care options to shop for you in the holidays. But no, we got to have 40 variants. Oh my God, I'm Leo Pond.
Well, so that brings up a big point, like you mentioned earlier. Like, is this the rebirth of like the 90s? Are we going to see like the death of comics again with these variants? You know, because you got to imagine, you know, the LCSs are stocking, you know, most likely some of these, if not all of them. And what are they just going to be stuck on the shelves and end up in the dollar bin?
Yeah, probably.
Oh, yeah.
So Leo, are you predicting it's getting worse? Because I mean, sales of comics, certainly mainstream comics, are at an all-time low.
Yeah.
I think this is, you know, they're trying to figure out gimmicks to you know, to move comics, and they don't realize, like, you know, like the art germ covers, you know, well, storylines, yes, but if there's like a, you know, a really hot artist, have them do, you know, the covers, you know.
Yeah, but Leo, the thing being is that comics is just like movies. They go through fads. I mean, like best example, do you remember when Marvel Zombies was a thing? And there were all those
Yeah.
Marvel Zombies variant covers, and yeah, they sold like hotcakes. Now nobody cares.
What's his
I
name
would
was
rather
making bank.
I would rather just own a thing of the prints of the covers rather than buying a damn comic, you know?
Yeah,
Well,
it makes
and,
sense.
Just a
and some of these variants go for,
Oh, yeah.
they're special order, but some of them are really pricey.
Yeah. Well, Leo, it's the same thing I say about when you don't like a book, just don't buy it. And
Oh,
eventually,
yeah.
when the sales tank and these things are cluttering up stores, they're like, okay, well, clearly that's a bad idea. So next quarter, none of those.
Yeah.
But they'll find something else.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
was
they'll-
doing.
they'll-
I got caught up in it during volume 2 of Batman when they were doing a lot of black and white variants. I was trying to get out to the store and get all of them before they were sold out. It was a tough time.
Yeah, in the 90s I did that, the friggin' Legends of Dark Knight, all those variant covers they had of that, and yeah, it's
Leo, it was the 90s. Mistakes were
was.
made.
Hey, it all
Isn't
started
that right,
with,
Rich? Mistakes were made in the 90s.
Absolutely.
That's why we didn't have cell phones then.
no, we all had 10 copies of Silver Surfer number 50.
Yeah. If we
Well,
had
that's
cell
because every
phones,
comic
none of
fan in
them
the
would-
90s thought that they were slick, and they were like, oh, I'm going to buy 10. I'm going to sell a bunch later. The
yeah.
price will go up. And then Superman dies. Everyone's like, oh, I'm going to buy tons of these. They sell them back. How much do I can get? You can get what you paid for it, $3.99. What?
Yeah.
Bubble pops.
Now, 99-cent bin.
Yep.
All right. Next, we got Rich on here with the Superior Spider-Man.
Yes.
Returns.
Right. So Dan Slott, 10 years later. One of the most popular takes on Spider-Man is returning to the Marvel stable this coming Wednesday. Superior Spider-Man returns, transporting Doc Ock into the body of Peter Parker once again for an all-new story. Once again, as I said, it's the first story in over a decade for Dan Slott writing the script with the Marvel mainstays Christos Gage, his art, and Ryan Stegman, Mark Bagley, Umberto Ramos, and Giuseppe Camuncoli.
Yep.
The House of Ideas recently revealed a preview for the story's debut issue, which is the, of course, Superior Spider-Man Returns #1. He slings again. The Redefine the Amazing Spider-Man returns to celebrate the 10th year anniversary, the most monumental and shocking Spidey story in a generation.
Yep.
And and Dan Slott says in no way we're telling you how it goes, but he promises no time travel, and he promised that it's going to be new and not rehashed storylines. So Dan Slott has a pretty good track record, so we're going to trust him. And I got to say, maybe a year or two later is when I actually started stopped buying physical comics, and this was one of the storylines that I remember being really impactful toward the end of my run. And
absolutely.
So I don't know. You guys looking forward to this one?
Absolutely.
I am wondering, how do we already know how Doc Ock gets stuck back in the body of Peter Parker?
Well, I think, Jeremy, this story might be taking place back when from what I understand of the preview pages, I think this is back when Ock was in Peter's body.
Was? Okay.
Yeah,
so
because
this,
he's
like already happened.
Yeah, from what I can tell is we see Ock as, Ock, arms, glasses, bowl cut. And then we see him as Peter, and he's, in the suit. He's got his mean looking look. He's talking to his little spider bots. So it looks like the story might be taking place back when Ock was occupying Peter's body, because I know at one point he was occupying a clone body of Peter, that essentially he was back to being Doc Ock. That was later in his run when he was still doing Spider-Man. But I haven't kept up with Spider-Man since he left the series, so I really don't know where Ock is. I know he's back and he's Doc Ock and he's, I don't know, mad as hell and can't take it anymore. I'm not sure.
I'm not gonna take it.
But I think it's taking place in the past. But I mean, Dan's doing it, and if there's any writer I have faith in Spider-Man, it's Dan Slott. And I know there's some people who would be like sacrilege, and I was like, you know what? Again, I loved everything he did with it. Not everything was great, but he took a lot of chances, and a lot of them paid off.
Mm-hmm.
So, in my opinion.
Next, this is how we combine covers. Drew, tell us about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Halloween special.
I'm super pumped by this because me and our great friend of the show, Justin Cooper, interviewed the writer for this, Eric Burnham, who we later had on the show talking about Ghostbusters and such. So this is the series that that Eric was working on. And it was originally, from what I understand, it was originally just supposed to be a mini series, but the sales were so good they decided to continue it. So this is an example of that. Saturday Morning Adventures Halloween Special 2023. So you've got excuse me, you've got Eric doing the story, Sarah Meyer, Dan showing, Dan being his frequent collaborator from the Ghostbusters doing the art, and Jack Lawrence doing the covers. So as the synopsis is, as Halloween approaches, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles must face their fears when a powerful and mysterious being challenges them to prove their mettle in a nightmarish test of bravery. Meanwhile, Shredder has an otherworldly encounter of his own when he summons an ancient spirit to gain a greater understanding of the powerful weapon he seeks to reforge, only to discover that some forces are beyond even his control. So 48 pages, $6.99. This is out October 11th this month. The variant covers are great. I especially love Dan's kind of a Freddy Krueger-ish cover there you see in the corner there. But the costume ones are just as good. I love the kind of Dia de la Muerto.
Yeah, the Day of the Dead one's beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful. But the one that I think is especially cool is you got all of them right there on the far right, dressed as the classic monsters. You got Dracula, the Mummy, the Wolfman, Frankenstein's monster.
That's gonna be the one to find tomorrow.
Yeah, I honestly, I've been following Eric's work for a long time. He really loves his stuff, and he just has this wonderful vision that really encapsulates the energy for this kind of thing. And I'm sold. Like, guys, please buy this. Support, get more turtles. Saturday morning cartoons. Now I want cereal. There you go. Done.
Well, that sort of falls in line with what NECA's doing. Just showed us real quick is they do have they're starting to do the turtles as monsters.
Is that the Hunchback of Notre Dame?
Yeah.
That is pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, yeah, that's Leo as the Hunchback, and then Raph as Frankenstein.
Cool.
And here's a better picture of Raph with all the different add-ons.
Are these at Target now?
That I don't know.
Target.
He just can't help with his toys. But yeah, so super pumped with that. October 11th, everybody. So.
This isn't an alternate cover, but a variant cover. Hi, I'm Carrie.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Carrie.
Lost my brain earlier tonight because Howard Mackie.
Welcome to Splash Pages, Carrie.
Thank you.
Yes, come back to us from the graveyard. We're doing news, Carrie, and then we're going to sign off.
So here's a bunch of other pictures that are variants, but they all go together in kind of a weird way because this is the Lubyverse, everyone.
The who?
Oh no.
No. This is actually cool.
Christian and
you're gonna have to explain.
Louboutin has launched. They're making him a superhero of his own design, and he has launched a limited clothing line based upon the Infinity Stones.
Oh man!
So, please.
No. So basically, Carrie, just to piggyback off of you, Christian Louboutin is a huge Marvel fan, and apparently this is in conjunction with Disney's 100-year anniversary, and he has a long-standing relationship with them that started in '97 when he designed some stuff for their 101 Dalmatians line, and then in 2012 he redesigned Cinderella's shoe, and then he continued that relationship. He did projects for the Muppets, Maleficent, Star Wars. So this is essentially his contribution to Disney's 100th anniversary, which we saw. So Carrie and Leo were showing he had stuff that involves the Infinity Stone. Some of his stuff involves the Infinity Stones. Namor, he has he's a big fan of Namor, so he essentially reinvented the Louboutin scales into something called Spike's Namor. So it's a reimagination that pays tribute to his Atlantis background.
I wish we could get a better look at the bag.
Yeah, so I think something like that. So you got that. See that you got the Infinity Gauntlet there with the heels and the shoes and whatnot. And then also he's even has stuff with Moon Knight. So it's pretty amazing. So for the first time ever, kind of again piggybacking off Carrie, he introduced him as a superhero.
He's very
so. Are these covers or are these actual products?
No, these are actual products, Leo.
Yeah.
So
there's the one issue. I don't know if there's variant covers for that.
No, there isn't. Well, I think there might be just one, but Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong. It's just a one issue tie-in to the products where he's a superhero.
Yeah, he's apparently been affiliated with Marvel for about 25 years or so, doing different things, and has decided they just decided that, okay, you can be a character, you're releasing a line of books, so they have him in Wakanda, like, studying the stuff and designing clothing.
I'm telling you, I'm gonna get this, because just in case they ever introduce him in any of the movies, this is going to become a valuable comic. Watch. Well, I'm telling you, there's not going to be many printed.
Well, Jeremy, it's looking like it's going to be pretty jam-packed. I mean, from what I understand, Black Widow, Shuri, Guardians, Avengers, like they're shelling out for this to make a big deal.
Be interesting.
So I do have a picture of where Marvel is headed, or they may have already headed.
Jump in the shark. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days.
Sorry, I just had to do that.
I thought it was better when he jumped the shark in Arrested Development.
Tom says that the internal movie monster figures are at Walmart. Thank you, Tom.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
But hey, Tom, thank you, by the way,
Carrie,
for the shout out.
I apologize if I kind of hijacked your news a little bit. So
it's all good. You are knowledgeable. We're going to jump back over to Rich now with some Wonder Woman Trinity covers. Yes.
All right. So, as most of you know, Tom King rebooted the Wonder Woman series this summer. And with that, the popularity of Wonder Woman's daughter, Trinity, was debuted there. So it was one of the most exciting things that happened to the character in a long time. And that excitement has now carried over into Trinity getting her own book in 2024. Now also being written by Tom King with his partner Daniel Sampierre and Belen Ortega, telling stories about Trinity as a kid while also hinting at what lies ahead for the character. Sampierre isn't the only regular King collaborator to contribute to the 48-page, with both Mitch Gerard's Evan Shaner offering variant covers alongside Jorge Jimenez and Ortega. Sampierre provides the main cover for the issue. So you should look out for that. And we all know Tom King's, obviously the rise of that book and the popularity of it. You're just going to continue to read the more intricate stories that are spun off from it.
Well, it's actually really interesting because I've read the first issue and I thought it was a real nice blend of politics, but also the world of Wonder Woman. Because we've seen stories where Wonder Woman is essentially an enemy of the government, but she still is Wonder Woman. So you got that, but the villain he's created and this history behind it, it could be some really interesting stories. And again, it's nice to see something that's unexpected in comics, because it proves that while a lot has been done. There is still new territory to explore, Rich. Just you have to be creative. And as we've seen with Tom King, he can be creative.
Indeed.
And I think something that you guys have just proved in the conversation is that while these covers are neat to look at, and we said before, I think just inspiring a new comic and just having the new material itself is enough to sell the comic. You don't need the covers to force the sales when you have the stories.
100%.
So
Well, also, I mean, being like Drew said, opening your mind to it, just being totally inventive. Like the storyline that they already started, which was in Wonder Woman 800. It is very cool. You have Trinity with Damian is Batman now, and I think is John is Superman.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm totally looking forward to it, and I agree. The first Wonder Woman was a good read.
It really was, and it's funny because I reread because I didn't read Wonder Woman 800, but the second I read it, he set up a lot of things that I feel like he's going to explore in his book. And it's also really great to see that version of Damian again, which, as I was telling Carrie, is the Damian that Grant Morrison had created in Batman 666, which is a Damian Wayne who essentially sold his soul to the devil in order to be able to protect Gotham. So it's a more supernatural Damian, but he's grown up, but he's still a little shit. So still good, still entertaining as hell. But no, but it's Tom's doing very good work with there. But I mean, again, we've seen when he's left to his own devices, he does a pretty good job. So, but for us, Leo, the chore is going to see if we can get him on an interview, which we learned.
Oh,
yeah,
that would be awesome.
Tried. Moving on.
Leo, how about you do some Transformers news?
Yeah. So Image and Skybound released Transformers #1 last week. So they have acquired the Transformers license from IDW. So the IDW books have stopped being published. I did read the first issue, and actually I'll just pop it over here real quick. And surprisingly, it is really good. So this is backed by what's the friggin' Walking Dead guy?
Robert Kirkman?
Robert Kirkman, yeah. I don't believe he wrote it though. Let's see. So writer and artist Daniel Warren Johnson. So what I really enjoyed about this is if you're a G1 fan, this here is essentially taken right from the very first cartoon episode.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the storyline is very similar with a couple of twists.
Go back one?
Yeah.
The familiar mountain.
Very familiar right there.
Yeah.
Yep, totally. And I mean, it's the same ship. And the same thing where the ship starts to bring them back to life. But they did include Jetfire, which is pretty cool. I'm not going to go over the whole thing. I definitely urge you
I was going to say, Leo, we talked about spoilers, buddy.
Yeah. But yeah, it came out last week, and I urge everybody, if you are a Transformers fan, definitely pick it up.
So, Leo, briefly before we get to more news, because there is more news. Being a fan of that, do you recommend that people usually go into reinventions? Because how many times has Transformers been redone and everything? Do you go in with like low to moderate expectations?
Yeah, I mean, when I heard it was coming out, I added it to my pull list right away. With a hope that it was going to be really good. But yeah, with IDW, like the storyline's been going everywhere. It was hard to really pick up and try to get caught up into the storylines, but I do enjoy that they're sort of like resetting it back to zero.
Okay. Jar, do you do the same thing with your beloved He-Man?
Yeah, I go in usually because I mean, let's all face it, He-Man. It's a hard pill to swallow if you go back and rewatch it. Yeah. So you got to go into each comic book kind of hoping you're going to get something new and fresh and and entertaining most of all.
Right.
But a lot of times, like right now, what they're doing is just doing little anthology books, which
Okay.
I'm not
Listen,
too.
buddy, I'm still hoping that when you have some free time, you're going to work on that campaign to get one of our guests that credit he deserves for the first He-Man. Remember?
Well, for real, Paul Kupperberg there.
Right.
He needs some recognition, but actually, I'm really excited because he hasn't been a guest yet. I'm going to actually get him on the show. Chris Campana,
Oh,
great
nice.
artist, actual personal friend.
Cool.
But he is just breaking into the world of Marvel with his variant covers and stuff, and I believe he's taking on Spider-Boy pretty soon. So
Good luck.
I'm his He-Man though. This is why I brought him up. Is amazing. I would love for him to be the artist on He-Man someday.
Well,
That is a dream for me and him. And back to the news.
back to the news. Okay, cool.
So, this has some variant covers on it. Drew, let's go into Marvel Gods with.
Oh, yes.
issue 2.
So, Marvel Gods issue 1 released last week, and I have to say, solid read. I'm really looking forward to seeing where Hickman goes with this. It's a little pricey. I'm not going to lie. I do agree with Rich. I think $10 for a comic is asking for a lot, even though the book clocks in at about 63 pages, and that could be also with ads. But Hickman, Valerio Schiti's Gods was absolutely great. So I cannot wait for issue 2 to come out in November, where Marvel released, as you see there, 4 unlettered preview pages with a cover by Mateus Mahananini. See, Jar, you're not the only one who has trouble with saying names. And variants by Mike Del Mundo and Alan Kwan. So we see the Sorcerer Wynn, who is the gentleman there is the gentleman we saw earlier in the first cover, wild hair, scar. Everyone thinks he's Doctor Strange. He's not. He's teaming up with Stephen Strange and Stephen's ex, Clea, to find the Cube-Sick core, while Wynn, his ex-wife, Aiko Mackie, is recruiting Mia, the magic girl, who's described as a young mage with startling potential. So essentially, what this story is boiling down is that Marvel's cosmic world has 2 groups. You have the powers that be and the natural order things. So it's a group of mystics and scientists who serve the cosmic entities like the Living Tribunal and such, or eternity. And this conflict is essentially finally being brought to light with gods. So we saw them in the first book dealing with what was called a Babylon event, which is a huge reality shattering event. See, Jar, again, pronunciation is not good for us today.
I'm right there with you.
Right. So personally, I think this is the kind of story that I really enjoy, that I think Hickman excels in, where he's just left his own devices, where he creates a big story, but one that still can focus on the humanity of the characters. Gods 2 goes out Wednesday, November 8th. I'm very excited. I'm definitely going to be reading this till the end, and I hope you guys give it a shot digitally. It's pretty much worth a read.
I'm reading it. I haven't made a decision whether or not I'll be reading number 2. I haven't gotten through 1 yet, but it's so far starting off very. Although I don't know all the characters, it's easy to follow along.
Yeah,
I'm not confused or anything. They're doing a really good job at explaining and keeping me entertained.
Okay. It's one endorsement from Jar Jar, and trust me, he hates reading. So there you go. This is great.
Are the consecutive issues going to be $10?
I have no idea. I'm not. I don't work for Marvel's finance department, so I cannot say. But maybe.
Good to know.
All right.
Can't know. Next on the news,
I'll bring up Alan Scott. First Green Lantern. He has powers slightly different than the other Green Lanterns. If you realize he didn't actually have the ring that the regular Green Lanterns had, he is not part of the Green Lantern Corps. Instead, he got his powers through the Starheart, which was something that he got either on a train wreck or retconned from being around a train wreck sometimes on it, sometimes not. The whole story here, however, though, is that they have changed once again how he was enlisted into the JSA.
Yes.
Scott has been married twice. He has children with Rose/Thorn, who left so she would not kill the children because she's insane, and now is married to a woman named Molly, who is Harlequin. Reminds me very much of Batman villainesses, but now they have suggested in this latest storyline that they have in different storylines put him out as being an out of the closet gay man. His children have accepted him. Now they're going back to when he is first being put into the JSA by J. Edgar Hoover back in World War II, and saying that Hoover was using blackmail photos that showed him with another man to force him to become the face of the JSA for the United States government. And there are also suggestions, because one of the lines that he says in that small thing that we saw was, "And bring your combat boots if they still fit." Was some people are taking that as conjecture, and we don't know because we haven't actually seen the comic itself yet, that he's trying to hit on him or imply that he's going to be using him in some way with that. It could also just mean represent yourself, look like the sharp person we want you to be. So
Right.
until we get actual proof, we don't know that, but there is proof that at this point they're deciding that they're blackmailing him. So we're just going all over the place with this poor man's identity. He's had it rough.
Well,
But
essentially what they're doing is they're reinventing JSA, because originally JSA was gathered, like in one origin, he was gathered by Dr. Fate to stop Germany from destroying the US. Now you have the JSA is simply a propaganda machine for the war effort, and Green Lantern is this loner who's well known, and they're like, we want your cred for our new team. And when he doesn't want to play ball, J. Edgar Hoover does what he did best. He blackmailed people to get what he wanted.
so moving right along, we have more Green Lantern news as well.
I'm
Yeah, this
assuming
one's a Jar Jar.
All right, so it seems Hal's ring in the newest issue 4, has been Sinestro tries to take his ring and learns that because Hal forged his own ring with his own willpower, nobody else can use his ring. Unlike the other Green Lantern's rings, who have been, well, Hal's before it got destroyed and remade,
Right.
was able to be stolen by Batman, Wonder Woman, not stolen, but used by Batman, Wonder Woman, even Lobo at one point. Deathstroke has stolen it before. So it's kind of a crazy new power. I don't know if it'd be called power, but
well, it's almost like it's a protection, Jeremy. This is like the equivalent of fingerprint ID for your phone, but ring. It's the most powerful weapon in the galaxy.
The willpower,
or like a DNA check for a gun.
Yeah,
yeah.
But that's really all that's going on there.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting addition. I mean,
it is.
Again, you have, the Green Lantern ring, which is considered an almost impossibly dangerous weapon in the DC universe. It's kind of making it a little bit easier to understand, because now it's like, okay, yeah, anybody can be a Green Lantern, but you can't just use anybody's ring.
Yes. So.
Right.
Ooh, maybe they're gonna make it so you gotta forge your own ring like a lightsaber.
That'd be kind of cool.
That would be
kind of cool. Chlorians have to add up.
Yeah, you gotta get your own kyber crystals, and yeah.
Speaking of Ahsoka, where did that kyber crystal come from?
Moving on.
He had all the parts.
Moving on.
Get out of here on this last bit of news.
Thank you. So, with last bit of news, the latest in Marvel's graphic novels is Shang-Chi and the Quest for Immortality, written and illustrated by Victoria Ying, whose film credits include Tangled, Wreck-It Ralph, Frozen, Moana, and Big Hero 6, as well as her own manga series, manga, City of Secrets and City of Illusion, we have 12-year-old Shang-Chi, who we know is one of the two children, his other one being his younger sister, Shi Hua, who are the only children of 5 Weapon Society leader Zhang Zhu, who is a harsh master, and Shang just wants to be loved and respected by his dad, improved in his eyes. So when he finds out his father's powers are weakening, he discovers of something that can actually essentially help him get the powers back. So for the first time in his life, he leaves the palace to explore the world, hoping to return, which is something called the Peaches of Immortality, to give his dad. But being out in the real world, which is very different than palace life, as we've seen with Princess Jasmine and Aladdin, it's a different world out there.
It's a whole new
So
world.
he meets a bunch of people, including one who's a boy named Lou, who
Don't you
essentially
dare close
reveals
your
that he may not actually know who his dad really is. So in the end, with his home and his dad on the line, is he going to save his dad, or does his dad deserve to be saved at all? So this book is out on sale now. And honestly, from the pages, it looks pretty cool. And I mean, I will give credit. Marvel has been pumping out a lot of, I would say, more kid-friendly, but still, entertaining to adults books lately. And I'm all for it, because I'm all for people reading. And I'm all for people discovering new characters. And sometimes, as we've talked before, out of continuity stories can be really great when you don't give a shit about what's going on in the current world. So
Yeah.
It's just my 2 cents.
That's true.
That sounds. Usually it's apples, but peaches work too, as far as the immortality thing myths go. But yeah, I have heard peaches and pears included as well in that. So
There you
that
go.
sounds rather interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
As long as it's
out
not
now,
mangoes,
everybody.
because that would kill me.
So yeah. Okay. I think that's all the news.
It's done.
That's the news, folks.
Yeah, it only took us 12 extra minutes.
By the way, that was creepy as hell with the "Don't you dare close your eyes, Jeremy."
Don't you
That
dare
is-
close your eyes.
Like, what the
Just
fuck
come
did that
with
come
me.
from?
All
Okay.
right.
Disney.
Well-
Didn't say close our eyes. Does that mean the show's almost over?
Leo, take us out.
I want to thank everybody for watching this fine evening. You know me, just Google me, you'll find me. I'm everywhere. But I run the Dorkening Podcast Network. You can head on over to thedorkening.com. You can see, a lot of awesome people doing a lot of awesome stuff right there. And I do a bunch of stuff during the week along with Splash Pages here. I'm also doing the Dork Night, Comics Paradox, Still Token with Midweek Geeks. There's something else in there too. I can't remember what it is. But anyway, we got a lot of awesome stuff going on. And without further ado, we will kick it over to Carrie.
Hey, everybody. When I am not fangirling out over Howard Mackie, and I am not hanging out on Splash Pages in the Dorkening, or maybe sometimes the Midweek Geeks in the Dorkening, you can find me over at the Owlite Network as well, where I do podcasts on Sundays, every now and then on Mondays, and very rarely on Thursdays. But we do everything about storytelling over there. That's our main focus. You can find me at Carrie Sanders on Facebook. If you see a little squirrel, this is the squirrel. If you see a crow, that is me. You can find all of my links from there. Look me up. We'll say hi. We'll hang out. Next.
Jar Jar.
Hey, everything Leo said, a little bit of what Carrie said, add in a little bit more of what Rich is going to say, and then some of what Drew says, and that's going to be exactly what I said.
Jackass.
But yeah, check out the adventures of Nancy Ann Ritter, which will be dropping episode 2, I believe, this coming Sunday. And as I said, everything else they all said.
Awesome. Velvet.
Hey, it's your man, Velvet J, and you just got through another award-winning Splash Pages. And whether you call him Dematis or Demateus, we just want to wish everyone a safe and loving week until we see you next week, because there are people in this world going through horrible things, whether it's in Ukraine or Israel/Palestine. we love you all. We are here for humanity, and be good to each other.
Peace and love. Peace and love.
Well said, Mr. Drew.
How can I follow that up? He just ends with the best note, and suddenly it's me. This is the worst ending ever. God. Hi, everybody. When I'm not bitching at circumstances here at Splash Pages, or, answering everyone's questions when they can't remember mundane facts, Leo. I am Drew. I am on Facebook under the same name. If you need to have any idea of my Instagram and have been watching the show more than once, look down below in the ectoplasmic green section of my personal life. I do things, and I've been known to talk, but if you bore me, I will shut you down quicker than Chernobyl should have been. That's all I have to say. Goodbye.
Chernobyl should have been.
Catch you later. Bye.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.